So we're gonna go ahead and get started, man. So thanks for joining us, first of all, on how to get started in real estate investing. I always like to start the day with kind of like, what am I grateful for? So I'm grateful for you guys wanting to take the extra step to learn about real estate investing. And if you're not already in real estate investors, looking to enhance your skills to go to the next level. Today I have a special guest, Jeremy Johnson. He's going to talk to us about how to um, run a turnkey real estate business. And um, so this is a couple of things that we will be learning today. This is our intention. So how to get started, the mindset, daily tasks, how to run a turnkey investor business, how to analyze, use systems, how to manage and leverage and scale. Just a couple of quick housekeeping rules for your purposes. Have a pen and paper ready for notes because you will be dropping a lot of gems. Or if you use Google Sheets, Google Docs, go ahead and pull that out now. Um, so everybody won't be talking at all time. All parties will be muted. If you should, a question should arise or anything, just type it in the question and answer section. It should be below, and or in the chat room. Either one will do. And then if we don't answer those questions, then we'll bring you out one by one at the end to ask any other questions. So let's have some fun and get some knowledge, guys. Just a little bit about me before I get started. I'm Bryant Miller. I am a real estate agent and a realtor in Atlanta area. I'm with Maximum One Realtor Partners, and I am the owner, so I have LLCs under that brokerage. It is Bryant Miller Realty Group. My educational background, I have an associate's degree in business, a bachelor's degree in supply chain management, and then I'm an expert real estate negotiator. I did take all of those businesses or the knowledge that I had to formulate, my business, and I'm especially with supply chain management, use Six Sigma and things to make things flow together and work smoothly. I'm also a mentor and for new hire agents that come in through the brokerage and real estate investors as well. So that's just a little bit about me. But without further ado, um, so grateful and thankful to have Mr. Jeremy Johnson to spend time out of his busy day. I know you're super busy to talk to us about how to start or run a turnkey operation for your investors. So a little bit about Jeremy. He's a real estate investor. He served in the Army. Now he travels from state to state, educating families on how to create generational wealth. And he calls those different lunch and learns. He's a mentor, coach, and wealth builder. I have somebody's raising their hand. Can you, Mr. Will, can you type it in the chat? Or is your chat working? You good? Just want to make sure everybody can hear everything. You good, William? Will? Sorry. And you could just direct message me too if you don't want your question seen by others. Looks like you're good unless you're just testing out the button. Cool. So, Crystal, I do want to show it. Like, I always remember, Ryan, can you post your info in the chat box, please? Which info?
Your contact info, bro.
Oh, that's I end up putting that in the last page, so we'll get to that a little later. Is there an option to send questions that panelists or something? Yeah, it should be. Just go to all panelists, because you might do the drop down box all panelists instead of all panelists and attendees. Should be a link. Okay, good stuff. So I want to show you how networking and talking to people actually works. So I buy most of my buying homes in Augusta, Georgia. And I went to an auction, right? And so I sat on the left side of the building. And at the end of the auction, went through the auction process. And they was like, everything that didn't sell, you could come up to the front and get the leftover properties or whatever the case may be. All right, so I went up to the front of the building, look at the property. I ain't see nothing. So I walked around the other way, and this guy, Jeremy, is standing on the wall talking to somebody else. It was like, hey man, what do you do? Did you, no, he said, did you find anything today? And I was like, no, why? Like, he's like, well, I find off my properties, I do this, this, and that. I would like to schedule a talk with you. So I'm like, all right, cool. Normally, I was like, all right, I give you a business card. Like, the real truth is in the follow-up. So this guy follows up with me. And like I said, I was in Augusta, so I came back home. He texted me, hey, great meeting you. And then he was like, hey, I want to schedule a lunch, sit down with you, lunch. And he came down the next day. So not only did he follow up, he took action and came down the next day, and we had lunch, and the rest is history. And so that's the point of talking to people. You never know who you'll be doing business with. Always talk to people. And so yeah, I just wanted to share that, guys, with you. Just make sure as you're getting into this business, just make sure you're talking to people, no matter how they look, what color they are, anything, because you never know who could take your business to the next level and who you can help serve as well. So without further ado, Mr. Jeremy Johnson, appreciate you coming in and sharing some knowledge with us.
What's going on, beautiful people? What's going on? And I appreciate the introduction, Bryant. And I was smiling because I remember that day very vividly. I even remember the other gentleman that I was talking to. The other gentleman, just as a sidebar, was an investor that I ended up selling a property to. He got in over his head, and we ended up buying the property back from him just to kind of, help him from losing his shirt in that deal. So talking to Bryant, and so what Brian didn't mention is that Bryant was already looking to get into real estate investing, and he had already committed, hey, I'm going to spend X amount of dollars to educate myself on this process. So Brian later on invited me and some of the other mentees to a conference. And so he's always looking to improve himself. And so I think it's just wonderful how it's come full circle to now Brian is hosting the conferences and webinars that he used to attend. So congratulations and much kudos to you, Brian.
Thank you.
So without further ado, let's jump straight into it. How to run a turnkey real estate business, because that's what I do, right? So I build entire rental portfolios for investors, both here stateside and for investors overseas. And the main goal is to make it a hands-off process. If you can learn anything to the point where it can be a hands-off process, that's when you're really at optimal performance. That's when you're really able to run a business and also actually have a life that you can live. You actually have time freed up to enjoy your life as you see fit. So there's three aspects of running a turnkey real estate business. The first thing is people. You've got to identify what type of people you're going to work with, right? So when it comes to real estate investing or business in general, but it's every business, there's no business that's an exception. It's people centered. Your business doesn't, your ability to scale, grow, expand, even exist is always going to be contingent upon the type of people that you're doing business with. Now, as a real estate investor, it goes without saying that I work with other investors, right? That's the given, but that's not clear enough. When it comes to what type of investors I work with investors who they're long-term, right? They're looking for passive income. Because there's two primary ways to make money in real estate. That's either flipping, what we call, buy and flip, or you can buy and hold. And I create rental portfolios, so I help investors who are looking to buy and hold. I buy the asset, I hold on to it. I'm not necessarily looking to flip it, right? So that's the type of people that I work with. Now, when you're working with people, your business is really just it's your job to solve a problem. So obviously you have to identify what type of people you work with. And all this is going back into how to set up a business that's a turnkey real estate investment. You've got to identify these things, these factors. So what problem do you solve? In my particular business, I work with people who have money. So they have a cash pool, meaning I have money. It could be a 401k. It could be lines of credit. It could be any funding source. I have money. What I don't have is consistent monthly income. So the problem that we solve, we convert a cash pool, if you're writing this down, into cash flow. There's a difference. So if I have a pile of money, all I have is a cash pool. right? Let's say I have $100,000 in a 401k or, insurance claim. These are real life examples. Working with people who have either money in the 401k, or they have, say, insurance claims, like they won a settlement or something like that. I've worked with those type of people, but typically the problem that they have is I have money, but I want to take this lump sum and convert it or turn it into monthly payments for the rest of my life. That's when you start to create wealth, where you have an asset that pays you every month so that you always have money in your pocket without having to go to a day job, right? So the type of people are people who are looking to buy and hold. They have money. They're looking to turn their cash pool into a cash flow. And then the process. How do we do that? How do we take a pool of cash and turn it into monthly income? I mean, the obvious way would be to say, hey, well, we just buy rental income or rental properties, which is true, but we need to break that down. In fact, we're going to need to clear this off so I can show you the actual process. So we know what the people are, we know the problem. The next thing is to understand the process. There's a process to turn a pool of cash into consistent monthly income, and to do so in such a manner that it creates a turnkey real estate business. Now, when it comes to investors, investors are just like you and I, right? You might know how to cook, right? I know how to cook, you know how to cook, we all know how to cook, but sometimes we don't want to cook. So what do? We go to a restaurant. That restaurant is going, even though we know how to cook, the restaurant is going to do the work for us. They're going to cook, and we just pay them money to bring us back the results that we're looking for. Investors work the same way. So you'll have investors they know how to assess a deal, they know how to find a deal, put it together, they know all the steps. They just don't want to spend their time doing it for whatever reason, right? They don't want to spend their time doing it. They'd rather come to you and have you put it together. Or, that's what the investors do. They come to me, they say, hey, they know how to assess a deal, which makes it even easier on my part, because when I bring a deal to them, I don't have to necessarily explain the deal to them because they know how to assess it on their own. They're just looking for results, right? So that's part of running your turnkey real estate business, that you want to make it as hands-off for the actual investor as possible, right? If you go to a restaurant and they say you pay your money, and then they tell you, oh yeah, by the way, you need to come back into the kitchen and cook. Well, why am I paying my money if I have to do the work? So with your turnkey real estate business, and what I do with my own investing firm, is to the maximum degree possible, the investor should be undisturbed. They come to me for a service to make it a hands-off process for them. And that's my job, to make sure that to the maximum degree possible, it's a hands-off process. And all we do is we bring back results. So talking about that process, again, just to kind of recap, it's three parts of a turnkey business. You got to identify the type of people you want to work with, the type of problem that you're going to solve, and then the process for solving that problem. So now we're on number 3, which is the process and how we convert cash pools into cash flow. So the first thing we have to do, we have to find, F-I-N-D. So we're going to find a discounted property. Why discount it? Because that's where the profitability is found. So say find a discounted property. Now, one of the mistakes that newer investors make is they assume that I can just buy anything, and investors will say, well, is this a good purchase? I can't tell you if it's a good purchase unless we're discussing returns. What type of return will you get on that property, right? So personally, because of my market, the Augusta, Georgia market, it allows for this, but I don't put together any type of deal where my investor won't make 20% or more cash on cash return. What does that mean? That means that every 5 years or sooner, that property should pay for itself consistently. Every 5 years or sooner, the property should pay for itself. Those are the type of deals that I like to do. Now, every market isn't built the same, and finding, let's say if you're in Los Angeles, it's probably a little bit more difficult, maybe impossible, to find properties where you can make your money back every 5 years. So in an event like that, that's where I have like my overseas investors or out of town investors where, hey, they know in my local market, I can't find those type of deals. So let me work with Jeremy, because he can take my cash pool, my money, and convert it into a rental portfolio or asset portfolio where I'm making 20% or more on my money. My money is doubling every 5 years or sooner, right? So in order to do that, the first thing that we have to do, we have to find a discounted property. We've got to be able to find a property that we can buy that is on sale. Now, mind you, there's a difference between a property that is for sale and a property that is on sale. If something is simply for sale, the property owner wants X amount of dollars for it. When something is on sale, it's being offered at a price that is lower than what it's actually worth, right? And that's the difference between buying a house and buying an investment. You want to buy the property if it's worth $100,000. I'm trying to buy it as close to zero as possible, because the difference in price between what I purchased and what it's actually worth, that becomes my profitability. So we always want a buffer for profitability built in. And the way that we ensure that is to make sure that we're never paying market. We're never paying what the property is actually worth. We're always buying at a discount. So again, we're buying properties that are on sale, not simply for sale. Does that make sense? Throw a thumbs up in the chat if you're tracking so far, if it's making sense. So the first step, we find a discounted property. The next step. Now this is where the investor comes in, because they already came to the table with this part, right? They fund the deal. So generally when an investor comes to me, they already have their own funding source, 401k, savings, lines of credit, insurance settlement, whatever the case may be. They already have a way to fund the deal. So that's the easiest part. And then you'll have investors where they have investing partners, meaning that if a deal is good enough, they have people who will give them the money for the deal. I mean, there's all sorts of ways to fund real estate deals. And whereas many people think that funding the deal is the challenging part, it's the easiest part for one simple reason. Everyone already knows that real estate investing is profitable. Like, you don't have to sell anyone on that idea. Like, you're not going to say, go out to, the general public and say, hey, real estate investing is profitable. And you'll have someone say, nah, no, it's not. You know what I mean? So it's not an idea that you have to sell to anyone. And that makes it easier on you as the investor, because you're not looking to sell someone on the idea, on this new concept of real estate investing. All you're looking to do is show them, based on market data, based on actual data, how you're going to protect their money and how you're going to help them make their money more profitable. Those are the two aspects, and you have to present it in that order: protect and then make it profitable. Because if I try to tell a person how I'm going to make their money without how I'm going to protect their money, it sounds eerily close to a Ponzi scheme. But that's kind of getting off of that. So our process to take cash pool and convert it into a cash flow, we've got to find a discounted property, we've got to fund the deal, and then this is where the actual deal can go south at any minute, and that's fix the property. The reason that this third step is so tricky is twofold. One, we've been teaching our kids for at least the last 40 years in America that you have to go to a university to be successful. Well, what does that do? If we're directing all of our children, the future, the youth, into universities, what happens for us real estate investors is that there are not enough kids going to trade schools, right? Becoming electricians, plumbers, drywall repairmen. There's so a myriad of trades that need to collectively come together in order to fix these real estate deals that we're putting together. But if you don't have enough people coming to replace those contractors who are either dying off or retiring, now we're in a position, every real estate investor can tell you the same thing, where we're sharing. First off, we got to pick through the contractors that are even good, separate them from the ones who are scammers or who are trying to run off with your money. And then of the few good ones, good contractors that we have left, we have to pass them around and share them, because there are not enough new people coming into the contracting field, right? Where we can, investors, we share contractors, and every investor will tell you the same thing. We'll jump in different text messages. Hey, you got a guy who can do roofing? You got a guy who can do painting? Because we've got to share the few good ones that are left. So that's why this is actually the most challenging part of that process, where we convert cash pool into cash flow. We've got to get the property in a position where it's move-in ready, right? That's how we can, once it's move-in ready, then we go to the final step, which is fill the property. We fill, FIL, the property with a tenant. Now, let's say with a tenant. So now, once the property once the tenant is in the property, what happens is you've officially gone from spending money, you had that cash pool, and now it becomes cash flow. So let me show you how that will work. And I'm going to give you a second to kind of make sure everyone's got this written down. right? We find a discounted property, we fund the deal, we fix the property, we fill the property with the tenant. Now that you understand that process, let me show you how the numbers would work in something like this. Let's say in Augusta, these are actual legitimate numbers in Augusta. You can buy and renovate a property, a 3-bedroom property in Augusta for, say, $60,000 is a safe bet. $60,000, you can definitely buy and renovate a property in Augusta. And just depending on what part of town you're on, you can easily get, you know what, let's go 50,000 because that's even more doable. Let's say we got 50,000, and then let's say you're getting $850 a month in rent. So your cash pool was $50,000, and now you're getting $850 a month in rent times 12 months a year. That's going to get us what? Now I got to pull out my calculator. Where are we at? 8,500 plus another 17. Was that 10,200? I think that's 10,000. Double check my math on this.
Yeah, 10,200.
10,200, right? So now you're taking $50,000 cash pool, and you've turned that into 10,200 per year, right? In perpetuity, literally for the rest of your life until you sell that property. But it's not actually going to be $850 a month until you sell that property, because rent always goes up. The cost of living always goes up. So in 10 years, even though it's renting at $850 right now, in 10 years, rent's going to go up. So you might be getting $950, right? Now, mind you, that cash flow that you start off with, $50,000, it never changes. What does change is your ability to get even more money in the future, right? Say 10 years from now, the average rent for a 3-bedroom property in Augusta might go up to $950. So then now you're making $950 a month, and you're making even more per year. But what you're doing is you just converted that $50,000 that you started off with into 10,200 each year for the rest of, in perpetuity until you decide to sell that property. It's always going to make you money. Now, if I were to hold on to my money, and this is when people don't understand how money works, they see 50,000 in the bank and they're like, oh, I just want to hold on to it. I just want to hold on to it. In 5 years, you will still only have $50,000 in the bank. In 10 years, you're only going to have $50,000 in the bank. In 20, 30, 40 years, the money is never going to move, right? Minus the pennies per thousand that they're giving you for interest, which doesn't even count for inflation. But whereas this person over here, in 5 years, they've made 51,000. Add another 5 years to that, they've made 61. What is that? 61.2. So this person is continuing. Their money is coming back to them. In the first 5 years, they've repaid themselves. Every year after that is pure profit. Now we do factor in for things like taxes, vacancies, repairs, and that type of thing. But just so that we don't overcomplicate the math, because I know math isn't everyone's favorite subject, just understand that the person who holds on to their money, they just want to hold on to the cash pool. They're never going to have anything more than just that initial amount. Whereas this person who's converted their cash pool into cash flow, now they know, and this is just with one property. Again, my investment firm, we built entire portfolios using the same strategy, where we're taking cash pools and we're converting it into income producing properties each and every month. Now, in order to make this a hands-off process, we're going to go back to the to run a turnkey business. You've got to have a team that can find your properties. So this is how, now we're getting into how it all plays into running a turnkey real estate business. So we have a team of people who, that's what they do. They go out, they find discounted properties. They understand, hey, what is the market value for a property? What do we need to be able to buy it and renovate it for, right? We need to be able to buy and renovate. That's what we call our all-in. The purchase price coupled with the cost for repairs is considered your all-in. That's that all-in amount. And then we take that amount and determine how much we're going to make off of the rent, and that's going to give us our return. But again, it starts with finding a discounted property. So if you're going to run a turnkey business, you've got to have a dedicated team. That's all they do. They go out, they market, they find, and they negotiate discounted properties. But then you're also going to, when it comes to funding the deal, the investor does this part. So we don't have to worry about funding the deal, right? But we do have to worry about fixing the deal. So you need a repair team. When we fix the property, if you're going to run a turnkey business, then you need to have a dedicated repair team to handle this part, fixing the property. And again, this is always the most challenging part because first off, when you buy a property and you do your initial inspections and that type of thing, you generally don't know what's under the floors, what's behind the walls. So you're going to have a budget based off of what you can see, but then you always have a reserve amount set over for things that you can't see, things that the unexpected. You might think that, hey, the house looks good, all it needs is some carpet and paint. Come to find out, the plumbing is old. They may have old galvanized plumbing that's rusted out, but you couldn't see that because the plumbing is behind the walls and under the floors, right? So we always have a budget. Hey, this is what we think it's going to cost to renovate, but also have this a budget because, I've never touched a property that didn't have a surprise attached to it. But when we have our reserve amount, that allows us to, we know worst case scenario, we shouldn't exceed. This is what we're looking to spend. Worst case scenario, this is where your reserve fund comes in. We shouldn't exceed that amount, right? So you have to have a dedicated team to fill the property. And then on the back end, this is where your property management comes into play when it comes to filling the property. Fill the property with a tenant. So you need someone or a team of people that can carefully screen tenants and make sure that they're qualified so that that property stays in a cash flowing position. So if the question is what do you need to do to run a turnkey real estate business? You need to have a team who does this part, finding discounted properties, a team that can fix the property once you buy the property, and then a team that can handle the management aspect of screening tenants, marketing the property, screening those tenants, and onboarding them into the property, making sure that it stays in a cash flowing position. That being said, go ahead and open up the floor to any questions that I may have missed. Anything that needs to be clarified.
All right, guys. It's question time. Any questions, comments? Let's work. Like you explained it good, unless they might take a while to type.
In the interim, I'll just go down another rabbit hole. So when it comes to finding discounted properties, I'll just kind of give you some of the common mistakes that people make. Take a hit of this coffee real quick.
Let's see, we put this.
Nothing happens until you find a discounted property. The mistake that people make is that they'll try to use, say, the internet like Zillow, Truly, and these type of things. You're generally not going to find a deal on these open sources where everyone has access to, because even if it were a deal to begin with, let's say a person had a house that's worth $100,000 and they're willing to sell it for $70,000. Well, what ends up happening is because everyone has access to the same internet, the same Truly and Zillow or whatever sources or websites that you're using, is that person will start to get multiple offers. It starts a bidding war. So whereas they were willing to take $70,000, now that lots of people are hitting them up, they might say, hey, now I want 80, 90, 100,000. I want to actually get what it's worth, because who's going to turn down money? So one of the mistakes when it comes to finding discounted properties is being uninformed and or lazy. Uninformed, meaning, hey, I didn't know that Zillow and Truly is not a great way to go find properties, right? So that's uninformed. Lazy is, I don't want to get out and actually talk to real life people who own properties, or I don't, you know what I mean? I don't want to do that, so I'm going to see if I can somehow come across a deal on the internet. And when you do it that way, again, you're not really finding a property at the discounted rate that you would need it, because not only do you have to factor in getting the property at a good price, you also have to factor in, what is it going to cost me, right? So even if the person is willing to sell the property at $70,000, if it's worth $100,000, they're willing to sell it at $70,000. That doesn't mean that you got a deal, because it could need $30,000 for work. So now if you pay $70,000 for it, put $30,000 worth of work, now it's worth $100,000 and you're into it for $100,000. Congratulations, you purchased a house, not an investment, right? So you've got to know your numbers. It's a numbers-driven game, and when it comes to finding discounted properties, trying to use the internet as your primary source instead, as opposed to actually getting out there, looking at houses, what we call driving for dollars, like getting out there and you ideally you want to work with off-market properties. These are properties that haven't been listed yet, properties that you can't find on Zillow or Trulia. No one knows about these properties, and you want to work directly with that property owner to negotiate your own deals. When it comes to fixing the property, there's so many horror stories I can tell you. But I'll tell you the best advice, instead of selling you on all the horror stories, and most, they are true. I don't know of a single investor who hasn't, been scammed by a contractor, where someone hasn't, either they ran off with the money or they didn't do the job up to par. So you ended up having to pay a second person to do the first person's job. It happens. It's part of the business. It's just it's the cost of doing business, right? When it comes to fixing the property, what we found that works best is to form a core team. And my job is to keep my contractors so busy with the properties that we're lining up and that we're doing, doing work on, that they don't have to go out and find their own team. I want to keep my guys together. Once you test out a person, they operate with integrity and they do a good job, in terms of swinging the hammers and getting the property move-in ready. I want to keep that person on my team. And the only way that I can keep them on my team is to keep them so busy that they never have to look for outside work. So that's your job as the investor. If you're going to run a turnkey real estate business, that you've got to not only just form that team, but you've got to keep them busy enough, because listen, whether you line up work for them or not, they still have bills to pay. And you can't expect the person to stay loyal to your team if you're not lining up enough work that's going to allow them to pay their bills, right? Just common sense. So when it comes to fixing the property, you definitely want to form a team, and it's your job to keep them busy enough where they stay on your team. And then when it comes to filling the property, you want to have a good, solid screening process and a solid lease. Those are going to be the two determining factors that's going to really predict your experience as a landlord. Whether you have a tenant from hell or whether you have that chill tenant where they pay the rent on time, never give you a reason to ever come and check the property.
So I got a couple of questions that came in.
Mm-hmm.
First one, who does the team consist of for finding the discounted properties?
So initially, I was the team of one, right? And then eventually, what I did is I taught other people how to do that facet of the job, right? So now I have a mentorship program, and I actually do deals with my mentees. So my mentees will find the deals, and I'll make sure the numbers make sense, and then I'll put the rest of the deal together, and I'll pay them for their work. So initially, all of these processes, minus swinging the hammers, I still wouldn't recommend doing your own work unless you're actually qualified and skilled at doing repairs. This other part of the process, it's going to be on your shoulders initially when you're first building your business. But as you expand, you'll start to be able to teach other people how to do other parts so that you can focus on the part that you actually specialize in. Kind of give you an example. I have an investor. He's an investor, but he's actually a contractor by trade. So his money-making activity is swinging a hammer. So he'll come to me because he knows that I can find the property for him, and he already has the money to fund the deal. Remember, investors already handle number two, but he can do his own repairs, and he has his wife who serves as his property manager. So all he needs from me is just to find the discounted properties, right? So you'll have those type of things where, so if the question is, well, who finds the properties? Initially, it's going to be you. That's because nothing happens until a discounted property is found. So initially, that's going to be on your shoulders if you're putting together a turnkey real estate business.
Okay. The next one, got any particular area that you like looking for these properties?
Yes, I always like the safe term is working class communities. That's code word for the hood. And that's where I prefer. Let me show you why. I can tell you why, but I'd rather show you why. All right. So let's say in a typical town, there's always going to be different sides of town, right? There's going to be the well-to-do side of town. There's going to be not so well-to-do side of town, right? So let's say on the well-to-do side, we're looking at a 3-bedroom, 3-bed, 2-bath house, what we would call a 3-2, right? So just a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. Let's say in a nice part of town, rent is $1,000. In the okay side of town, rent is $800, right? You can expect to pay $800 a month for an okay side of town. And then let's say in the hood, a 3-bedroom, let's say that goes for $700 a month, right? Now, this is why I like to play around this area, working class or okay. Because if anything happens like COVID-19, where people are out of work and they can't afford where they're staying now, the person who used to be able to afford $1,000, they might not be able to afford $1,000, but they'll definitely be able to afford $800 or $700. So I always have a constant supply of tenants who can afford where I offer, because I always have a class above me who, if they ever need to downsize, they'll be able to afford where I invest. So I prefer hood properties or, you know, working class communities. Nothing. I don't invest up here top tier because I need a buffer for economic challenges, upswings, downturns, anything that happens in the economy. I need to have a class of people that can afford where my properties are, so that my properties stay in cash flowing position.
Okay, good stuff. Good stuff. Good stuff. All right. Is there anything that you're doing different due to the current state of the country? Should we be waiting for a great deal?
The deals are always happening, right? Because I don't base my business model based on the economy, because it's unpredictable. That's outside of my control, right? I focus on, and this is kind of going into mindset, which we'll probably discuss in a few minutes, but I focus my time, energy, and resources on the things that I can control. I can't control the economy, but what I can control are problem solving. So with or without COVID-19, there are certain sets of problems that's always happening. Let me give you some of these examples. Death. People are always dying, and guess what happens when someone dies? Especially if the property has a mortgage attached to it, someone's now responsible for paying a mortgage for a house that they don't live in, right? So in a situation like that, it makes sense to sell the property so that you don't have to pay that mortgage. So that's where me as an investor, I come in. With or without COVID-19, no matter what's happening in the economy, this problem always exists, which means I always have a problem that I can solve with as a real estate investor. And in the same token, divorce is always happening. In fact, at any given time, it's above 50%. You can flip a coin to tell if you're going to stay married or not, right? So with divorces happening, they're trying to separate their assets and that type of thing. And if they're jointly, and I've actually done deals like this where a person is divorced, I don't want to be, do anything with this other significant other or ex, right? Ex-husband, ex-wife, whatever. So I can solve that problem by taking that property off their hands. Let's see, what else? Downsizing. And we'll just stop it at here. People are getting older. They no longer need that 4-bedroom, 3.5 bath house that they had, when they had kids. So if they're downsizing, something has to happen to that house, right? So if we can put them into one of our rentals, or even sell them a rental and take on their house, and then, do something different, repackage the deal with their primary residence, again, that's a problem that you can solve as an investor. So I don't look at the economy and say, well, what can I do differently? Because I'm focusing on the problem that's always happening regardless of the state of the economy. And deals are always happening in terms of, when's a good time to buy? Anytime these problems are going on, it's a good time to structure a deal. Does that make sense?
That's good. That was a lot of gems too, right there. A lot of gems. Got one that came in while she answered, Ms. Campbell. How to find efficient contractors.
Oh, that could be a whole Bible. You want to ask questions. The easiest way to find a contractor is to catch them while they're already at work on someone else's dime. Meaning, and I've done this. You've seen this too. You just never thought about it. If I'm driving and I see my neighbor's house or a house across the street, whatever, and there are people out there working on the roof, well, if I like their work, because someone else is paying to test them out, right? If I like their work, I'm going to get their business card, because now I've been able to see their work, I see what time they're showing up. If it's like, this actually happened about last year. My neighbor across the street had his roof done. And so I can see what time these roofers show up. I can see how diligently they're working, right? So they're paying for this, but I get to test out this contractor using their property. They're footing the bill, so I can kind of see if that contractor, if they're showing up every day, what size crew they have, what type of materials, how they're doing the craftsmanship, are they laying that roof correctly? And so at their expense, I get to get a business card and say, hey, I like your work, let's work together. So that's definitely one of the ways that you can find good contractors. You just catch them on a job, on someone else's job, if that makes sense.
Okay, good stuff. Can you talk about your experience with townhomes as rentals? And are there any funny stories?
I don't prefer townhomes. I don't prefer townhomes because they have HOAs, and HOAs generally dictate how many of those townhomes, and I understand it from a property value perspective, but HOAs generally dictate how many of the townhomes, if there's 100 townhomes in the subdivision, they normally have a language written into the HOA that only X amount percentage can be a rental at any time, right? So they might say, hey, only 15% can be rentals at any time, which ends up in a situation where they normally have sign-up lists, right? If I have 100 properties in the subdivision and only 15% can be rentals, that means at any given time, only 15 houses can be used as rentals. So if all 15 houses are used as rentals, but you want to move out and use yours as a rental, or someone wants to sell me theirs, right? They want to sell me their house and I want to use it as a rental, I've got to wait on this waiting list to see when I can even use it as a rental. So that right there, that puts something that could leave my property in a state of not being cash flowing. And I never want my properties to be vacant, not if I can help it, right? So that's one drawback of HOAs when it comes to townhomes and that type of thing. The other thing is, if you're talking about a connected, if they're sharing walls, if it's a connected townhome, you can run into an issue where if the HOA ever needs repairs done on your block, on your strip, even if it doesn't affect your particular unit, they share expenses. If there's 10 townhomes on a block and they're all sharing the same wall, if the roof needs to be replaced on the unit in the end, that roofing company says, well, I can't guarantee the work unless I do the whole job. And of course, they just want the whole job, right? So the whole roof gets done. Everyone has to share that expense. And you didn't get to vote on it and say, hey, no, I don't want the roof done. So someone else is dictating, hey, surprise, not only do you have the regular HOA fees, now you've got this added bill that they might prorate over, a year or so, but still, it's an added bill that takes away from my profitability if I'm using that unit as a rental. So for those reasons, I don't really care for townhomes. I feel as though I would lose too much control over my ability to make that property as profitable as I would like it to be. Does that make sense?
Good. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Good. Appreciate it, Will. Awesome. Let me see if I had any. I'm gonna just share my screen again real quick, and then let's see. Back. Go on to the next slide. So we talked about how to get started, how to run a turnkey business, how to analyze deals. So mindset and daily tasks. I know you said you was gonna get into that.
Yeah, let's get into the mindset. Mindset. The first thing is that it's not. You got to understand what fear is, right? So let's talk about fear when it comes to mindset, because this is going to be the biggest albatross to anyone getting started. It's going to be their fear. And fear is literally a story that you've made up in your head. It's just like the boogeyman. It's just like an imaginary friend. It literally only exists in your mind, right? But fear is one of two things. One of two things is at play, right? It's either an absence of information. So I don't know what I'm doing. So let's call it absence of info, or presence of uncertainty. I don't know how this thing is going to turn out. Now, when it comes to mindset, I never want to be afraid of something, because the fear itself is just a story that I've told myself. That's all it is. Fear is just a story that you've told yourself, and you've made up that story, cast characters and scripts based off of either I don't have enough information or I don't know how it'll turn out. So sometimes you can have the information on how to get started, but in your mind it's like, well, I still don't know how it's going to turn out. I don't know if it's going to work for me. I mean, I see it working for literally everyone else, but I don't know if it's going to work for me, right? So it's presence of absence of information. Either I don't know what I'm doing or I don't know how it'll turn out. It causes us to fear and create a story in our mind that only exists in our mind. When it comes to mindset, the only thing that I do different from other people is I tell myself a good story, whereas they must say, well, I don't know if this is going to work out. I'll tell myself this is going to work out. I'll make it work out. I'll keep, if I got to repackage a deal, right, to make it work out, whatever I need to do, because I've already committed that I'm going to do what it takes for it to work out. That's my mindset. My mindset, I don't live in the passenger seat of my life. And by that, I mean, you're hoping that that situations play out in your favor. I'm going to do whatever it takes to force the situation to play out in my favor. So I'm in the driver's seat. I used my ability to make decisions and choices, and I do it in such a manner that is going to lead me to the destination that I want to arrive at. That makes sense.
Okay. Mindset.
Oh, let me answer the other part. Daily tasks. This is an important one. It's one that I learned probably within the last 2 years. Start your day the night before. So before my head hits the pillow at night, my big to-do task or my must-do activities, as I call them, right? They're written on the board, and I iron my clothes the night before because I go running in the morning. My running clothes are already picked out, and they're set aside in the morning. So I start my day the night before. Everything that I know I'm going to need to do, it's already written down. Clothes are picked out, they're ironed. I'm ready to go. So that's definitely helpful, and it actually helps you save a lot of time when it comes to waking up, especially on things that you don't feel like doing. Like really, who feels like getting up to go running? I don't feel like it, but the clothes are already picked out, so at least it makes it easier to just get up, jump in the clothes, and go out the door.
Big Jim. What systems are you using? Any particular system to keep up with all of these moving parts?
Yes. So because I have an asset manager who handles the screening process and that type of thing, what I'll do is if I hear about a new system like I think the system that we tried out most recently is called Rent Ready, as far as being able to screen tenants and put in work orders so the existing tenants can put in the work order that goes to our contractors and that type of thing. So I'll try out different systems, but what I'll actually do is if I hear about something, I'll say, hey, you test it out. Stessa is another system that we use. I'll tell her to test it out because she's the one who's going to actually have to live with it in terms of like if it works well or not. At this point, because I don't do hands-on with certain parts, certain facets of my business, I'm always looking for ways to make my company more effective and more productive and streamlining processes. But since she handles that, I actually let her decide. She'll decide if she likes it, we'll buy it. If not, we'll just stick with what we have until we find something better. So Stessa is one of them. STESSA is a property management software that we've used in the past. To be honest with you, I'm not exactly sure if we're still using it because again, I don't do that part. Rent Ready was another one that we were looking at recently, as far as streamlining everything. When it comes to the acquisition side, that's the part that I do. So it's very basic on acquisition. I'll use sometimes I'll use virtual assistants from Fiverr to scrub data for me. Like I'll get a list of potential properties that we might be interested in, and I'll tell the virtual assistant, hey, put this in order based on this spreadsheet. Fill out this spreadsheet, really. I just give them instructions, fill out the spreadsheet, and then I'll take that aggregate information and we'll contact property owners. So that's just Fiverr as far as finding, virtual assistants who can work for you at an affordable price. And then Docusign is probably the system that I use the most when whether it be a lease or a purchase agreement or any of the paperwork. I have a whole toolbox full of templates for my most common purchase agreements. All that's in the template, right? All I'm doing is filling out names and dates and purchase amounts and that type of thing. And I send it to them via Docusign so that everyone can click and sign from their phone. I kind of make it easier for everyone that's involved. And the paperwork automatically gets forwarded to our closing attorney. They'll do the title check and then tell us what day we can close on the property. So those are probably the systems that I use the most often.
Okay, perfect. How do you manage? It goes into that. And then how to leverage and scale.
Leverage and scale. Oh, no, Fiverr, Fiverr. I just saw that question in the chat. Leverage and scale. So there is commonly called the burst strategy where you buy, renovate, rent out, refinance, and repeat. So I have investors who use this strategy where they'll buy a house, we'll fix it up, we'll put a tenant in place because when it comes to being able to refinance your property, the bank wants to see that it's attached to some form of income. And that's what a lease is. A lease creates a binding agreement where they see someone's agreeing to pay X amount of dollars per month for this property. So if I want to borrow, say, $50,000 from the bank using my property as collateral, they see, hey, you have someone who's agreeing. We would only charge you, say, $400 a month to set up this type of agreement, and you have something in place that says you're generating $850 a month in rent. So that those numbers make sense for the bank. The bank sees, hey, we only need $400 of it. You're making $850 a month on the rent. We can use that to refinance. So they'll give me when you refinance, what ends up happening, let's say let's keep it easy numbers just so you can understand how this works. So let's say a property is worth $100,000. That's what it's worth. The bank says, we will give you up to 80% of what it's worth, right? So they'll say, hey, well, if you refinance with us, we'll give you 80,000 of it, right? So this becomes your cash pool. So it's your job as an investor, or this is the way I handle my cases, my files for my investors. If I know that the bank is going to give us $80,000 on this, then I'm trying to have my investors all in, buy and repair at $70,000. So when they refi, they actually made $10,000 more than what they put into the pot altogether. Does that make sense? So now my investors are automatically making $10,000 just off of doing a refinance, right? It cost them nothing extra, right? They made $10,000, right? So then, now that we're all in at 70K, the bank might say, we'll give you $80,000 up front, and your repay will be $400 a month. But the property is being rented at $850 a month. I'm just throwing out numbers just so you can see how this all works, right? Now, you started off, let's say that investor started off with $70,000. That's how much they had to spend on this house. They were all in for $70,000. We found the property at a discount. So we were able to find a property where they could buy and renovate it for 70, even though it's worth 100. They refinance it. So they started off with a cash pool. Remember how we're converting. So you can see how this works. They had a cash pool of 70K. We found a discounted property where they could be all in for 70K. They refinance it. They now have another cash pool of 80K. Let me so that I don't lose anyone. You started off with 70,000. That's what you were able to spend. We found a property that's worth 100, but you would be all in at 70. The bank will give you up to 80%. So now you started off with 70,000. You fixed, renovated, rented out that property, refinanced it. The bank gave you 80,000. Now you take that 80,000. Guess what you do? You do it again. You find another discounted property where you can be all in and still make money off your refinance. And that's how we actually build out a whole portfolio of we'll buy it, we'll renovate it for them, we'll rent it out for them, they'll refinance it, and then we'll start back over. They'll buy another property. And that's how you quickly go from buying one property to having a whole portfolio using bank money, using your properties as collateral. You don't want to over leverage, but that's a whole conversation for a different day. But that's one of the ways that you can scale your business. Once you buy your first property, just depending on how you bought it and the numbers, you'll want to buy it with equity. That's why we say the first step is finding a discounted property, not a property that's being sold at market value, because we need to have enough buffer in it. The bank is only going to give us 80% of what it's actually worth. Then we need to be all in by about 70%, somewhere around there, in an ideal situation. That makes sense.
Sure. Got a question that came in. Good stuff, and that's actually one of the main strategies that I use to acquire my rentals. How is lending being affected in this space due to COVID-19?
So that's an excellent question. Traditional lending is definitely on a standstill because banks, let's say a banks have 1,000, let's say a bank they've issued out $1,000 mortgages, right? They're expecting that mortgage to come in at $1,000 a month, and they've issued out 1,000 of these mortgages, right? Right now, the bank is about to take, upwards of $1 million loss. And this is just using low numbers, but I want you to understand from the bank's perspective why these things are happening. So the bank says, hey, we've got 1,000 of these things. We're not sure if these people are going to be able to make their payments. If no one pays, then we're on the hook for up to $1 million loss. Easy, right? So what banks are doing now, because they know that part of their portfolio is probably not going to be cash flowing anymore, what they call a non-performing asset, meaning that technically I do have a mortgage out there where I'm supposed to be making $1,000, but if the person's not paying, that becomes a non-performing asset on their books. So now what do, right? What they do is they raise the criteria, because they're not trying to add to, if I already have 1,000 mortgages that are in jeopardy right now, I'm not going to try to add to this number of more mortgages that might be in jeopardy. So some banks, such as Chase, they're raising their requirements to issue out new mortgages to make sure that they have only the highest qualified people where money's not an issue. So Chase said something crazy as needing a 700 credit score and up to 20% down. Well, gosh darn, if I have 20% down, I've got to be in a good financial position where 20% down won't hurt me on the house. You know what I mean? If the house is worth 100,000 and I have to bring 20,000 to the table just to buy it, those are the type of deals that they normally do with investors. Like, we have to bring 20% down. But when they're issuing out that mandate for a standard, just a regular person trying to buy a house to live in, that's a sign of the times. But for investors, in terms of lending, because I don't teach my mentees to go to we don't buy with traditional mortgages. That's not how we buy our properties anyway. The type of properties that we buy, the bank wouldn't finance it anyway, because we buy them where they need so much work that when the property is appraised, it's not going to appraise for what it needs to appraise for the bank to do business with us. So, it doesn't affect me or my mentees because of how we acquire our properties. We don't go through the traditional, lending process. But for anyone who's trying to use the traditional lending funding, it's going to be a hard sell. It's going to be really hard to get bank money right now if you're trying to go through the traditional mortgage system.
And to add to that, I have on Saturday at 12, I have one of my lenders talking about funding for my residential business, how we get the flow. So definitely check us out Saturday for that. Another question came in. Do you have, or do you find banks that are willing to work with refinance properties under $40,000?
Yes. Typically, what you want to do in that, and I just prefer them anyway. But small mom and pop credit unions. One second, let me get some of this coffee. So the only way, because credit unions do the same thing as banks, where they borrow government money, they issue it out in the form of loans, car loans, house loans, lines of credit, credit cards, whatever, right? The only way that a small credit union can compete with your Wells Fargo, your Chase, your Bank of America is they have to be more flexible. So all of my business is done with my local small credit union, where I know the loan officer, the commercial loan officer, by name and face. Like, we know each other. I can send him an email. Oh, Jeremy, how are you doing? Right? The reason that that's so important is because if you need some flexibility, or if you need someone who's going to work with you on a refi, your smaller credit unions are going to be likely to do that, because that's the only way that they can stay in the fight. They've got to be more flexible than the big guys. Well, denying your application is not going to hurt Wells Fargo. They're not going out of business if they deny the small guy, right? They have so many big players that they can work with that they're not hurting for business. But your mom and pop, that small local credit union, is probably named after the street that it's on or the town that it's in. Those are the people that's going to be more willing to do business with you and be more flexible when it comes to kind of creative ways of putting a deal together.
I think that answers the question. Really good. Let's see, let me go back to my screen real quick. So yes, we ended up, we answered all of those. If there are no further questions, I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna let you know what Jeremy has coming up and how you can contact him, because he dropped a lot of gems. Definitely thank you, Jeremy, for sharing all this information today. Nothing but gems. If Jeremy did a good job, just throw some thumbs up for Jeremy, man.
Appreciate it. I appreciate you having me, Bryant. Always a pleasure to share this information.
Gems. Cool. All right, so things that Jeremy has coming up, you can definitely follow him on Facebook at Jeremy Johnson, or
Jay Johnson
I think ran out of friend request. So you, JJ.
Yeah. So I peeked out on Facebook, but they can still follow me and see all of my they'll be able to see all the posts. But as far as actual friend requests, yeah, they cap out at 5,000.
Right, super popular. And then you connect on giantsgrow.com.
Yeah, that's the email address. I answer it personally. Connect@giantsgrow.com. If you want to, talk to me, anything like that, shoot me an email, DM, inbox, courier pigeon, smoke signals. I answer all.
IG is at JJ Johnson says.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got a space right here, but connect@giantsgrow.com. That's the email.
Yes.
All right. right, and then
Let's see.
so my contact information, if you want to get in contact with me, is Bryant Miller on Facebook, Realtor Bryant Miller on Instagram. If you're looking to get started in real estate as an agent to become a realtor, you can just check out my YouTube. I got some information there to how to get started, the whole process, everything on there. Just following Realtor or Bryant Miller on there, and then how to get started in real estate investing. I got a free case study on how I got started. Just go to workwithbryant.com. Show the info one more time. Cool, go take a screenshot. And then you do have something else, Jeremy, right?
Yes. 1 second. 1 second. Trying to throw it in. All right. So my mentorship program, I do have a mentorship program. It's not a pay to play type of program, meaning that you'll never be able to find a website where you can kind of just enroll on your own. All my mentees, I have a very personal relationship with my mentees. I take time to make myself available for my mentees. So the first step is scheduling a one-on-one with me. You can do that by going to connect@giantsgrow.com. You can put in the subject line one-on-one, and we'll kind of talk about the mentorship program, see if you're a good fit for the program, see if the program is a good fit for your goals. If not, no hard feelings, but I'm very passionate about working with my mentees. And so again, it's not one of those it is a paid program, but still it's not one of those pay to play and that type of thing. So reach out to me. You schedule a one-on-one with me. You can DM me on Instagram @JJohnsonSays. Say, hey, I'm interested in learning more about the mentorship program. I'll send you the link so that you can schedule a one-on-one for a day and time that fits your schedule. We'll talk about it, see if you're a good fit. The mentorship program itself is nationwide. So we have mentees in Chicago, Atlanta, Jacksonville, California, Long Island. I'm in Columbia, South Carolina. It's all over, Birmingham, right? So real estate and investing works the same no matter where you're located. The great thing about the program is that, first off, because I heavily screen who I'm willing to mentor, you're always working with people who operate ethically and with integrity. Because we'll do these deals where, I have mentees in Atlanta who will find properties here in Augusta. They've never even seen the property. They might see it online, but they've never actually been to the property, never had to talk to the property owner, or sometimes they do, but I'll put the deal together where they're making money off of something they didn't even have to leave their home, and they get a check, right? So in order to operate at that level of integrity where money is being made, you've got to be able to trust who you're working with, which is why I'm very big on screening who I work with. Even the enrollment fee is a one-time thing. You pay it one time, but you have a lifetime access to me as your mentor, to the training materials, to all the documents that you'll need to start a turnkey real estate investment firm. So I teach you what I do, and even behind the scenes, I'm always posting. Every week I post in our private group actual deals that I'm working, screenshots of me talking to other investors, even me talking to the city about a 75-unit motel that we're looking to purchase. All of that's in the I try to show them exactly everything that I'm teaching you, showing you how it works and how you can duplicate it and replicate it in your own business.
All right, perfect. I had a question come in. Will the Zoom be shared or recorded? We are not sure. We've been looking into it on what we're going to do with it, but as of right now, it will not be. It will not be.
Someone asked about Houston. Yes, we have.
Yes, yeah. Yes.
Yeah, we have a team Houston. We have a whole group of mentees in Houston that are operating right now. So yeah, all over. That's what I say. It's all over.
Indeed. Okay, awesome. So yeah, man. That's my contact information as well. California as well.
Yes, we have a mentee in California right now. I think she's closer to San Diego, but it works the same. Like if you ever want to link up like physically in person with some of the other even when Bryant went to Houston a few months back, but he was busy because I know he was at a seminar or whatever. But I told Bryant, I said, hey, you can reach out to Team Houston. They'll probably take you out to eat and that type of thing. Jacksonville, like anytime I do my lunch and learns, if I'm in a city where my mentees are, we're linking up for lunch. We're actually getting together. That's why I say I'm very personally vested into my mentees' success, which is why I don't just allow any and everyone to join the program. All of my mentees have my personal cell phone number. That makes sense.
Indeed. So what's next, y'all? So first off, thanks again. Thanks a million, Jeremy Johnson.
Thank you for having me, brother.
Time out your schedule today to introduce or show us how to turn a real estate investing business, a turnkey real estate investing business. Now, for the rest of the week, we will be doing this at 12 o'clock every day for 7 straight days. And so for tomorrow, we have Mr. Michael Brown. He's going to talk about how to have a 9-to-5 and manage a rental portfolio, big one. And so,
hold on, let me pause you real quick, Brian,
okay,
if you don't mind. Listen,
in.
it tells you Michael Brown, that's Mike the mentor. Michael, you got to tune in to Mike. All right, Mike is the guy who got me started. All right. So if you think that I'm teaching you some stuff, Mike is who got me a seat at the table. He's the one that took me under his wing. So if you don't tune into anybody else, you got to tune into Mike the mentor. Like he's on a different level when it comes to thinking.
Right. Yes. Good, man. Beast mode. Beast mode. So that's Wednesday. Also on Wednesday at this as a 7 o'clock, we'll talk about how to find deals and turn them into Airbnbs. Thursday, we got Ms. Deanna Britt is going to talk about how to generate fresh leads weekly and then save money and time while doing so. Friday, we have Michael Braswell at 12 o'clock. Let's talk about how to calculate hard money and use it to profit in real estate. So I know somebody in the question like, hey, how is lending going? So he's going to talk about lending for finding off-market deals because you can't go, most of the deals that we find, traditional routes won't be able to finance it. So hard money, definitely want to listen in to that as well. Saturday at 11 o'clock, this one, we're going to talk about mindset before entering into multifamily. As a multifamily and on different college campuses, and the Airbnb, some of them out as well. Also, that's not on here, but I have my home buying seminar. So if you're interested in purchasing your first home or getting into another home, what's the market doing today for buying at retail on this space? And then on Sunday, this kind of picks up where this one is going to get more in detail on how to manage other investors' properties. Manage over like 500 plus investor property in the Atlanta area. Yeah, definitely don't want to miss that as well. You don't want to miss any of these as possible, guys. The link to how you got to link on here, the link is in my bio, or you can go on register on these sites down here, the link tree / Bryant Miller for your seat to those. Cool. So I think that definitely sums it up. We'll see you tomorrow at 12 o'clock sharp, and yep. People already registered. Good stuff, good stuff. Do you have any further words, Jeremy?
I want to see you win, beautiful people. But more importantly, I want to see you grow.
All right, guys. Thanks, Emil. See you tomorrow.